think when you get asked questions like how did you become an entrepreneur, or how do you become an engineer, how do you become an author, or how do you become a speaker, there's never a one moment in your life that leads to that. It's always a bunch of stuff that just comes about, and voila, when you look back, oh, you're successful, oh, you're an entrepreneur, oh, you are a speaker. So it would be the same for me. As a mechanical engineer, I never thought I needed to become good at presenting. Never. I thought I would just do my job, create computer-aided designs and 3D designs, and that's it, call it a day. But I realized in the workplace, I actually had to give presentations. I actually had to present some of my ideas and some of the prototypes that I would build. And I remember one day, my manager, great manager, she pulled me aside and she's like, Danish, you can be the smartest engineer in the room, but if you don't learn how to present confidently and clearly, you're putting a glass ceiling on your head, something that you'll never climb any higher. You'll never become a manager. You'll never become a leader. And I said, what should I do? And she recommended I join this public speaking club called Toastmasters, which many of you might have heard. And I did, and it was one of the biggest gifts in my life. It literally changed me. I felt like when I was back at my work, I felt like I was getting more buy-in for my ideas. I was getting more airtime with senior decision makers. And I thought this is the best soft skill that every single person should have. So I think if there was a trigger moment in my life, that would have been it. But that doesn't make you a speaker. I think the moment that I might have become, and perhaps myself realized that I can be a speaker, was when I was on the TEDx stage. Growing up, I've always had the dream of speaking on giving a TED talk, which I'm sure many millions of people actually have, on that red dot carpet with the big TED letters next to you, maybe a PowerPoint and like hundreds of people in the audience. That was my dream. It happened in 2017, I think, in Texas, TEDx SMU. It was a TEDx Kids, which is a little bit different. So I had a bunch of middle school and high school kids in front of me. And that's where I shared my story of how I overcame my fear of public speaking. And that TEDx talk has done great. It has to date 2.5 million views. And it's been a great help for me to propel my brand as well. This is a skill that you are always improving. There's no finish line for improving on your public speaking skills. So I would say even you have helped me. When I've talked to you in the past over a Zoom call, you have given me instructions, you've guided me on best practices for looking professional in the virtual setting. So you have been one data point. I think one of the earliest ones, aside from the Toastmasters, doing it in a more professional setting was a company called Mandel Communications. They were one of our initial partners for my startup, which is ORAI, which is a public speaking app. And we partnered with Mandel Communications, and they actually invited my co-founder and I to go to Denver to attend one of their 2-day speaking workshops. Mind-blowing, great experience. You come in the morning, leave in the afternoon or late afternoon, and you've sat there just absorbing ways of sounding more confident, of being a leader from your voice, from your gestures, and from your content. Those three things. So I think that was one of the first stepping stones of going into the professional setting of becoming a speaker. But along the way, I've had other people, other speech coaches who have given me feedback, especially as an entrepreneur, founder, CEO. When I've gone on to raise funding for my startup, I had to do a lot of pitches to investors at demo days. And I've called on to some of my speaker coaches as friends to please help me, done it on Zoom calls. They've guided me on, Danish, that gesture, you can change it from 1, 2, and 3 to 1, 2, 3. Just adding some flair to the way I present. Many people. Marv as well. He helped me with my initial story. I think story sells. And he opened my mind to the art of storytelling very early on when I was still in college. Personally, I also went through that roller coaster ride. There were a few months in that year where lost hope, where, oh my God, half of this year is just, we're just going to write it off. Revenue has gone down, business is moving slow, sense of direction is not there as much. What should we do? So there was that moment where we, as a team, just had to come together and realize this is actually okay. It's okay to feel like this. And I think one thing that changed was when I decided let's come back home. So I came back to Tanzania, stayed with my parents. That was amazing. Staying close to family has been a blessing for me. Never realized that would have been possible. But staying at home, being close to family and friends actually makes a big difference in your mental well-being, in your happiness. So that actually is the foundation, because if you're happy, you're healthy, you will be productive and you'll be able to think clearly. And now it's like, oh my God, there are so many ideas. There's just less time to implement on so many different ideas that are just churning in my mind. At the foundation, it's being financially free. That really guides many of my decision making. So if one of your revenue streams is impacted, okay, how can you either mend it, fix that, but simultaneously start experimenting with other revenue streams? So that's been my top of mind for the past 6 months or so. I have to learn a lot of skills for that. In the digital world, more SEO, more digital marketing in a way that's not paid but more organic. That's one skill I've actually taken a deep dive in. I've always known the theory of SEO and digital marketing. I've never really done it, but I think this pandemic has forced me to actually put my hands down and actually do some of that thing. And I think the other skill I'm also learning is some data science, being able to query some of your data, being able to just manipulate stuff and find insights from data that you can again share back with your customers, that you can use in your email marketing. So that's another skill I've also picked up. First one would be, you can learn anything. If a school, if a parent can teach you this skill of learning how to learn, you'll be awesome at life. And that's something that I had from an early age, being able to just go on YouTube, go on Google, fix anything, literally any problem. And people would be like, Danish, how do you know how to solve that? Well, I just learned how to do it. Even in my TEDx talk, I mentioned that I was not a public speaker. My co-founder and I did not know much about AI beforehand, but we learned it. And that's how we created an AI speech coach, a public speaking app that to date has over 300,000 downloads across the globe. We never went to college for that. We were never skilled or experts in that field. But the biggest insight I've got from my journey is learn how to learn, and never put a blocker that, oh, I don't have that skill, or I cannot learn, or I'm too old, or I don't have the time. You can do it. And the best way is not doing a course just for the sake of doing a course, but actually having a side hustle. If you have a side hustle or a side project, you are forced to not just learn that skill, but to execute on that skill. And that's, according to me and according to many other people, the best way of learning. You'll have the highest form of retention if you're actually forced to take some theory and execute on it and implement it today on something tangible. Let's talk about the basics first. If you're already a speaker, you have already been a year in the pandemic, you already have the basics: a mic, good lighting, good camera. So let's leave that aside. Now, what are some of the other things? The first one is finding different revenue streams. And I've mentioned this a little bit earlier in this interview. You don't just have to get paid for speaking. There are many different ways that you can figure out of adding different revenue streams. Either you can actually have an offer at the end of a workshop, one of your speaking events, an offer for a book. You can actually bring 20 copies of your book. You can actually ask people to subscribe to your email newsletter. And newsletter is something that every single person should have. And you need to present your subscribers with awesome, amazing content that they're not just going to get anywhere out there. So have that. Start a YouTube channel. That's something I've recently started. It is very, very demotivating at the first, because you're putting an hour or so in making a very highly produced video. You might even get a video editor and pay them $50 to $100 per video to edit it for you. And at the end of the day, 3 views, 6 views. It's disappointing, but stick with it. Consistency is key. Every single week, at least for 6 months, if you do that, you will see the rewards. So those are some other ways of just expanding, just going wide, and not just focusing on the things that you have been doing in the past, but thinking of different ways of doing the same thing that you're already good at, which is speaking.